15. Call to order. Commissioner Richardson,
Here.
Commissioner Gosar,
Here.
and Commissioner Ibera here. Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's open up with the public hearing for petition for vacation of a portion of Maple Avenue and a portion of a road commonly known as First Street located in Section 3, Township 15 North, Range 78 west of the 6th prime meridian, Centennial, Wyoming. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this petition?
Yes, Honorable Chair and Commissioners, I'm Dave Coffey with Coffey Engineering and Survey. I'm here representing the petitioner, Jill Gustafson. And I have an exhibit I'd like to present to the commission regarding this petition to help clarify some comments that have been made by some members of the public regarding access from the highway to First Street in Centennial. For whatever reason, I believe the petition lacked some clarification regarding the requested vacation. The petitioner has a sincere desire to continue to allow and afford access from the highway across a portion of her property through an easement or a right-of-way, whatever is most appropriate. In addition to requesting that portion of Maple and First Street that are occupied by the buildings that she owns. So I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record as part of the public hearing. I know there are some residents of the area that had some concerns about whether or not access is going to continue. So thank you very much. Jill, did you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Anyone else in the room wish to speak on this subject before this public hearing?
Well, I would just like to know what the plan is. Like, it sounds like there will still be access to First Street, but what is the plan for the portion of the property that is going to be vacated? Like, who does that ownership go to? Right now, it's just a street, and I'm unsure of who's right, who's allowed to either purchase that or grant ownership of that land. And I just need some clarification what actually is supposed to happen.
Okay, and for the record, could I have you identify yourself?
Yes, my name is Kirk Road.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to speak on this petition? Okay, how about online? Again, anyone in the room? Could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
It moved in second that we close the public hearing for the petition to vacate a portion of Maple Avenue in Centennial, Wyoming. All in favor?
I would like to say, in answer to Kirk's question, if you talk to, so there hasn't been any decision made by this board. But if you talk to Mr. Coffey right there next to you, he will be able to answer those questions as far as what they're petitioning. Does that make sense?
It does. But will you guys be voting prior to me finding out what that answer is?
I don't think.
No, it's not on the agenda to vote.
I don't think, you can have that conversation anytime here, as soon as, chase them out the door or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When is the decision going to be
I don't know. The chairman is who decides what gets on the agenda when, and so he'll know the answer to that. It would be in the first meeting in December or the second meeting in December. So it won't be very far out from now.
And will there be any more opportunity to give input?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Gosar, do you want to address that?
Sure. We do not have a completed viewers report for this, and that viewers report has to include public comments and address those public comments. And there have been some comments that have come in. And so when we have a completed viewers report, then we'll have the ability to schedule another schedule this topic on the agenda. And so I think Commissioner Richardson would be, I think most likely probably the second meeting in December, possibly with the holidays coming up. So I'm not sure, but Jennifer Curran, also an county attorney, if you would like to get hold of it, and she'll be able to talk to you about the process going forward with this a vacation in Centennial, and especially this vacation.
Thank you, Commissioner Gosar. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Let's move on to comments from the public. Good evening, Bailey.
Good evening, commissioners. I would just like to introduce Andrew Terrell. He's our new prevention specialist. So it's finally off my plate, and he can take over from here. So Andrew, you want to introduce yourself and just tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
Hi, Andrew, welcome.
Hi, commissioners. Good evening. Like Bailey said, I'm Andrew Terrell. Started yesterday with the prevention specialist position. Excited to dive into this grant and this program and be a part of the coalition and the great work that this program seems to be doing for Albany County. I come to Laramie 2 years ago. I have a background in social work. Spent time in the youth detention center, primarily focused on substance abuse. Spent time working with elderly and disabled with Medicaid programs, and also managed a SAMHSA grant at a tribal school in South Dakota. So happy to be in Laramie. The work that Bailey and Tracy have done the past year to get the program kind of restarted and the coalition back up and going again has been nothing short of incredible. They've really set me up for success. So excited to take over and get to work. So.
Welcome, Andrew. We've been in anticipation of your starting date since it's been a while since we interviewed you.
Yeah.
So you wrapped up everything that you needed to.
I did, yes.
Previous job. Well, welcome on board. I know the coalition will be eager to meet you.
Definitely. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments from the public here in the room? Okay, how about out online there? Any comments?
Commissioner Ibarra, this is Commissioner Gosar. I'd like to make a public comment if I could, please.
Yes.
Just the last election day just passed a week ago Tuesday. I just want to thank everybody who was engaged with that, the clerk's office, the election judges, the poll workers, voters of Albany County, and all the candidates. I really do think it was an amazing turnout and an amazingly efficient and professional election. I went and early voted 6 minutes for the voting machines, even with writing in. And so I got to thank Jackie and her staff and all the other staff that helped, and then all those people who volunteered their time as election judges and poll workers. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Well done, Jackie.
They're here, the whole team. Thank you. Okay, again, any other comments from the room? Okay, I would entertain a motion to close the comments from the public.
I move that we close the public comment.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we close the public comment period. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. Okay. Any disclosures tonight, commissioners?
I have none.
None for me.
And none for me. All right, are there any considerations of changes on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner. Wyoming Machinery and Caterpillar reached out to our department and would like us to give their input or our input on a field follow machine. So they have sent us a non-disclosure agreement, and if we could add that to the agenda.
You bet. Do you have a preference where to put that,
First.
Rob? What's that first?
I just,
It's your lucky day. I'm gonna accommodate.
thank you.
That's what you do when the chair is away.
Good sense, and he asked, or I mean, you asked.
Any other changes to
I
the
have
agenda?
a change. Let's see, I would like to remove item 13, please. It was kind of a placeholder if we needed it. We ended up not needing it at this time. It may come back in front of you all in another quarter or so, depending on when we receive quarterly reports. So for ARPA funding, but at this time we don't have any, so we just need to remove that.
Okay, just item.
Just
13.
13, yeah.
Yeah.
14 we do have some. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other changes we need to consider for this agenda? Do we have to vote on that, Jackie, to change it? Okay, let's move on to approving the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Then moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Okay, Rob, you're up.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. As I said, Wyoming Machinery and Caterpillar reached out. They're wanted 2 counties in Wyoming to field test one of their new machines for input and feedback. They'd like us to do one of them. They're looking for a county with elevation and snow. We couldn't promise some snow yet, but anyway, on Friday, they sent me a non-disclosure agreement that needed to be signed. And Jennifer has read it, and I don't think she had any issues with it. So.
And you obviously wanted this sooner than later.
Right, yeah, that way they can start moving.
What's the machine called?
It's, it'll be a road grader. I don't know if it's like a 140 or what, they haven't said anything,
Gotcha.
but it's gonna be a road grader they want to try out some snow plowing, different snow plowing implements. And I'm kind of proud that they picked our operators to give them some of that feedback, so. Forward to that.
Yeah, we have some good hands. don't we?
Yeah.
Any questions for Rob, commissioners? Okay. And could I have a motion to approve this non-disclosure agreement?
I guess I do have one question, and that is, I suppose the chair is signing on behalf,
Right,
like we
yes.
don't each need to sign.
No, I think there's a signature line for the chair, Jackie, and myself.
Okay. I move that we approve the non-disclosure agreement with Wyoming Machinery as presented and direct the clerk and the chair to sign.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve this non-disclosure agreement and direct the board chair and Jackie to sign. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's move on to item 8A. Present for discussion bid submitted from MSI regarding the county courthouse boiler project. Good evening, Jake.
Evening. This is for the boiler project. We solicited bids and we got one bid back. And our engineer's estimate for this project, which was based on the previous line item for the construction. It was originally part of the North Entry project. The line item was about $30,000. We bid this, it came in at $117,000, which is significantly more than what we had anticipated. And the thought at the time with $30,000 estimate was that we have all of the conduit in the concrete to kind of maintain temperature, and so we wouldn't have to salt and put chemicals on the concrete to melt the ice. But at 117,000, we can kind of buy a lot of concrete for that. So given that the bid came in so high, my recommendation is to probably reject the bid and just kind of table it. Maybe we'll revisit again in a year. But I think that price, I don't think it's going to be economically feasible, even if it's half that in a year. So,
Jake, how do you reconcile the huge difference there? What are they considering?
I think partly is we had a pretty tight schedule. We wanted to get it done before winter really set in. And so we could get it operational before we had to start snow melting or putting snow melt on the concrete. And also supply issues. Because of our schedule, they had to get what was available, and what was available may have been, the Cadillac of boilers versus what we spec. And so that in combination with just price inflation, we've been seeing all kinds of public works projects come in significantly over what our estimate was, or what the budget for the project that was established a year or two before came in at. I mean, it's the world we live in now. So it's unfortunate.
Okay, thank you, Jake.
That's kind of how it is.
Commissioners have any questions for Jake?
I think you answered them.
Okay. So this was just a discussion item, so no action needs to be taken. Commissioner Gosar, did you have anything to add?
Nope, I'm just waiting for item 9 because I think there's the answer for us.
Okay, all right. So let's move on to item 9. Accept or reject the bid from MSI in the amount of $117,343 for the county courthouse boiler project. Jake.
So, yeah, this is just to follow up the discussion. This is the action item, and as I suggested before, I recommend that we reject all bids and not pursue the project.
Commissioners, I entertain motion for item 9.
I move that we reject the bid from Mechanical Systems Incorporated for the county courthouse boiler project.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we reject this bid from MSI in the amount of $117,343 for the county courthouse boiler project. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Thank you, Joe. Guess you're up for the next one. And Item 10, present for approval, final acceptance of the Albany County Denton Creek Road Cattle Guard Replacement Project and direct clerk to advertise for final payment to Hamaker Excavation Incorporated, the balance due on the 41st day following the first advertising. The final cost of the contract was $296,273.35. Jake.
This is for the acceptance of the Albany County or the Dunn Creek Cattle Guard project. We installed 3 new cattle guards, put new fence up and repaired the approaches to those cattle guards. We're complete, final completion and accepted by Rob, and everybody seems to be fairly happy, and we didn't even get too many complaints during construction. So it was
Really happy with the results.
It was a very good project. GD Hamaker was the contractor, did excellent work, and the project is complete. So we're just wanting to get to approve the final acceptance and direct the clerk to advertise so that we can give them their retainage at the end of 40%.
Thank you, Jake. Any questions for Jake, commissioners?
I would just like to say I drove that road the other day. Man, it used to be a punisher, especially in a big truck, and just rattle your kidneys right out of you. And it's nice now, so that's good.
It's fairly smooth.
I know that the people who live out there are pretty happy.
Good project.
Anything else? Okay, could I have a motion for item 10?
I move that we approve item 10 as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve item 10 as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Jake. Move on to item 11, present for approval, a request for approval of the de-annexation report to be submitted to the city of Laramie for 988 North Pierce Street de-annexation and authorize the chairman to sign. Dave.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Amber Westbrook and Johnny Ferguson requested annexation from the city of Laramie, or de-annexation from the city of Laramie. The statutes give the Board of County Commissioners a chance to weigh in. We have an opportunity to provide them a report of any impacts that they'll have on the county. I drafted a report for your review and potential approval that we would just send over to the city to go with their de-annexation request. Some of the things that I have noted in here, saying it's not, they wouldn't impact the county road, it's right off of Pierce, which is city maintained road. We do have a small wastewater permit on file for that. This property, I guess maybe I'll give you a little bit of history about the property, but the property was in the county at one point, and then the property owner at the time wanted to develop that property, so they went through the annexation process, received the annexation, and before they were able to develop, the property owner passed away, and so they weren't able to finish it. And so there's new owners of the property. City services were never provided to the property, and they do not wish to develop the property. They just want to use it for their residents and their outbuildings. And so that's why they're requesting this. And so yeah, there's not a whole lot of impact to us. The only thing that will have to be done if it does get de-annexed is we will need to go through our zoning process so that it has a zone, but it's under city zoning at this point. So what we would do is we just run it through planning and zoning commission in here to get that zone rural residential, which is what everything around there is zoned. Our comp plan does talk about this area. It would be in a priority growth area 1. So if they didn't want to develop in the future, the comp plan suggests that they annex. However, we don't have an annexation requirement, but I did note that that's what that says. Note the county would benefit from the taxes from the property, but we would also have to provide the services that we provide, which would be limited to the sheriff's office going out there basically and checking things out. And then if they do anything with their on-site or their small wastewater system, then they'd have to come through our office. But ultimately, findings, I would say, is it's pretty minimal. So if you look this over, if you guys are okay with it, then we just request that you approve this and have the chairman sign. I will note that there's a 60-day shot clock, and we're coming up on that now. So, but if you want to make any changes to this, that's fine too. But for us, it's not really that big of an impact. It's really the city where they'll make the decision where they want to keep it in the city limits or not.
And David, did the new owners get a copy of this analysis that you are sending out?
No, we did try contacting them through their attorney to give them input on what we needed, but they never returned our attempt, I guess. I think Matt Ayers sent an email to their attorney, but we didn't receive a response.
Is this something we traditionally do, is give them this kind of information?
Well, this is the second one I've done. I don't think we did in the past year,
Okay.
so.
Okay, I just don't want them to be blindsided. There's nothing.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
pretty benign. It's like, we don't care if they de-annex, we don't care if they stay annexed, so.
Okay. Right, thank you, David. Commissioners, any questions for David?
So I have a couple of comments, or maybe they're questions. So I am familiar with this piece of property. It was developed to county standards at the time. And I don't see any reason why, if they're asking for de-annexation, then they know what services they're going to get from the county. So I don't even see any significance in our comments. Does that make sense? I mean, they're like comments for the record, but
Right.
You know what I mean? So.
There's not a strong opinion in it. It's just stating facts.
Just so they couldn't get twisted up on who's gonna respond if
Right.
call law enforcement, you're gonna get the sheriff instead of the Laramie police. That's about the only thing. All the rest of the responses are the same. So.
Any other questions, comments for David? Commissioners, I'd entertain a motion for item 11.
I move that we approve item 11 as presented. And
Second.
authorize it.
Second agrees.
Been moved and seconded that we approve item 11 as presented and authorize the chairman to sign. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Thank you, David. Item 12, present for approval, letter of support for United Way's collective impact project. Dave.
Good evening, commissioners. Just a quick background on this. This was part of some ARPA funding that you all approved for United Way to help with this collective impact project, and now they're moving forward on it, and they're requesting a letter of support. And Evelyn and Truman tell you some more. So
I'm actually gonna let Tim, who is now the contracted director, paid for by the grant, come in. But I'm here for support for his first county commissioner's meeting.
It's not super formal.
Great. This is for
This is the last.
fellow commissioners and public.
Limited as it is.
I'm Tim Metzger, I'm the director of the one item of note. It's on the agenda listed as collective impact. We have a steering group meeting on Friday, and I anticipate the steering group officially approving a name change from collective impact to community impact. Because we're working to make it more accessible to the citizens of Albany County outside the nonprofit network. But one item of note there for the agenda, and I'm here requesting a letter of support. Specifically, we are putting in an application for a seed grant with a nationwide organization, Community Heart and Soul, that does community listening. We are applying to have them come in and help us with that aspect of the project. The idea is that matches a community health index that is data driven tool to present areas of need in Albany County. And we'd like to work with community heart and soul to develop systems for community voice to be heard and collected, especially so those who feel like they've been excluded from such processes, to prepare a way for buy-in to occur and for people to feel heard. So I'm here to request a letter of support from the county commissioners to strengthen our application with community heart and soul.
Any questions? Commissioners?
That
I
was
do.
excellent.
Well, thank you.
Commissioner Ibarra, I do have a question or two for Tim.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, Tim, could you maybe develop what Community Heart and Soul, their techniques to get people to engage, especially those that are generally not asked to engage and would just be interested in their techniques?
Sure. So short answer is it's interview driven. The longer answer is we become responsible for putting together an advisory board that informs the process that we'll develop with Community Heart and Soul. If we're accepted, part of what we're purchasing with their services is a coach to come in, help us develop a team of volunteers. The first step we would take is to put together an advisory board that is hopefully representative of Albany County, and then use a system of like network analysis to basically establish who knows who has connections to whom, where, and to get folks involved to start reaching out on a peer-to-peer basis, to develop a large body of citizens willing to chat with the volunteer team that we put together. These volunteers then go and run interviews, and the two core questions they ask are, what do you love about living here and what do you need? Then those stories get collected, aggregated, and we have that as data, and it would be up to us to decide how we present that and what we do with that. But those are the two basic questions. And in asking those questions, the goal is to create a network of support, both on the citizen level, but also on like the governance level, on the nonprofit level, so that whatever needs are identified at the end of this process, there's buy-in already for people to work together on attending to those.
Thank you, Tim. And then is there, I guess, an intention to get people from a variety of backgrounds, different socioeconomic standings, different cultures? How does that look with Community Heart and Soul?
Yeah, how it looks, I don't know. What I can say is that that's essential. It's not just something to which they pay attention. It's something that they talk about, and I've had a number of meetings with them. That is a focal point. How that goes about, like I said, I can't answer that, but I do think that's where the advisory board becomes significant. How do we build the types of relationships where those sorts of connections feel comfortable and safe to reach out to people who are typically marginalized or excluded?
And then my final question, Tim, is how long is the process? When you're successful, thinking positive here, how long would that outreach go? Is it 6 months? It's a year? I'm just thinking about, we have a long range growth management plan, trying to figure out the mile around the city and the county and what that might look like. And I suspect this might be informative to that process.
Sure, it's about an 18-month process. So the first phase could take 4 to 6 months, and that is purely developing that network of volunteers and discerning who has access to what demographics and then from there you proceed to actually running the interviews. After running the interviews, collecting that information. Possibly on our end, we might do some coding of that information, and then the final phase is studying that, working together with the networks we've developed to identify possible initiatives or action plans that can then be executed at the end of that 18-month process.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
And Tim, when do they decide on this grant application?
It's rolling. So it's a rolling application. So as soon as we submit, we'll proceed to a series of a couple of interviews. I don't know how extensive those are in terms of who they interview. It might be just us, the leadership team, the steering group for community impact. That part I'm not certain about, but I do believe it goes pretty quickly once we submit. It should, within a month and a half, we would know.
Thank you. Any other questions for Tim? Or for Evelyn, do you have anything
I-
you wanted to add?
No, I'm excited about partnering with Community Heart and Soul should they accept the grant. And I will, and Tim has done a lot of research into it and conversations with their nationwide team. And they do have a history of partnering with county commissions and nonprofits. And so this is not something that's new to them. So, yes.
Other questions?
Yes, I have a question. If the grant is awarded here and you go through the process where you sort of get the community feedback and data and buy-in, I won't be on this board when it comes back around at that point. But it sort of begs a question to me. You get a list of recommendations, or it's almost like to me, I would imagine it being something that gets reported back to the bodies like the city of Laramie City Council and the County Commission. But I wonder how the recommendations, the ideas for implementation get, so then you have this body of data and so on. I mean, is it like a regulatory thing? Or is it things that governments do with public funds to add services, or, because there's no guarantee that private capital will follow where the plan says,
Yeah.
if the citizens express a desire, there's no guarantee of private investment, especially if it's too expensive. Because people who invest expect a return. So, and more than just a social one, right? Does that make sense? Like, is it?
Yeah.
The measurable deliverable at the end, is that a taxpayer sort of envisioned like a government direction kind of a thing, or a development and regulatory kind of thing, like the chairman was talking about, in terms of a growth or development plan? And if so, would it include bankers, developers, realtors, mortgage brokers, people who know whether something will actually work?
Yeah.
Or do we just wind up with a kind of like a wish list, a pie in the sky thing that doesn't, isn't necessarily economically feasible, or, when you run the pro forma, does it work, right?
Right.
Do you understand?
Yeah. I think,
It took me a while to sort of develop that, to ask it, but do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. And if I'll give a blunt answer and then expound, but I think the blunt answer is like, there is a possibility of failure where all we have is that wish list and nothing happens. That can occur. I don't envision that being the outcome. I mean, I'm kind of like staking my job right now on success with the project. Their outcomes and deliverables in communities are really varied. They have some that, people in the community talk about a lack of access to walking trails in one part of town and how that affects overall community health, unless governance gets involved to pass regulation to install those. That funding could come from the county. They've had other communities where like downtown alliances end up funding changes, maybe it's like park benches, bike racks, the such. There's a whole spectrum of how it gets achieved. What I envision is using this process to try to match with the community health index, that is the other part of our community impact, to see what is an area of great need where achievable outcomes can occur, and then target further grant applications to attain our end. So we don't know what could come out of the process. It could be something like bus stops. Your question of like who funds it, I think that's
Albany County has lots of public entities and tax exempt entities, and the way the state chooses to tax results in us having, low sales tax receipts relatively per capita, and not very great property tax base, right? And those are the only two ways that the state taxes, right? So, so I think it would be good if along the way that there are checks in it. You know, even sometimes certain groups, it has been my experience as a public official that certain groups can find a way to get more feedback that they prefer for their favorite thing into the process. And then as it emerges, it appears like there's a clear consensus towards, you know, Q thing A or Q thing B, as opposed to, you know, an honest, it's the problem with, you know, community feedback sounds really fun and neat and cool, but it's one of the problems that can happen with it. You know, the people who are the most interested or the most involved get involved early and often, and then the people who are maybe the most underserved or the most marginalized don't get found.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. And part of why I'm invested in this as like a second branch of our community impact project is to access those populations. You know, community needs assessments abound. We could grab the hospitals off the shelf and say like, oh, mental health is an essential issue in this community and move forward. But that's different from trying to generate that community buy-in so people feel like participants. And then like more on the functional end of things, the first branch, developing an index. One hope there is that if we do that in collaboration with the nonprofit network in Albany County, then we create systems for collecting information and submitting information that make it easier to apply for things like community development block grants that can add an influx of funds to the community to then maybe take on some of these projects at the end.
Yeah. So sometimes they wind up being a public-private partnership at the end. Sometimes, depending on what it is, they wind up being sort of all public or public sort of nonprofit in that sense. It depends on whether it's a social service or an infrastructure thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess my advice to you in the process would be any wish list that requires private capital, you know, has to think about cap rates, right? Capital is liquid and it goes where there's the most certainty and the best return. So, you know, like a downtown development authority might decide to do certain things because it enhances that environment socially, safety wise, and retail, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they probably aren't going to make that kind of investment, you know, private capital if there's not a monetary return in addition to the other things. Like and it's not because they're mean, it's just because they can't afford to, you know.
Right.
Some things are an investment and some things are a donation, and people have limited budgets for both, right? So I would just urge you to keep it realistic, you know, to make sure that the list, you know, the menu of options is a realistic one based on the kind of tax base that we have and private capital resources, because we're undercapitalized privately and, you know, on the tax base side. So it's tough.
Yeah. So if I can like ask for clarification on that, part of what you're saying as we approach the end, identifying action plans, also we should build something of a business plan where we can present to possible partnering entities a return on investment, if you will. Like if the action plan we identify as bus stops, what does that do beyond just the social good? What does that do as a return on investment? Is that part of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Public officials have a habit of asking private capital to do things that don't make sense, is the point. Even if people like it.
Right.
You know, like as a business person, I could like the idea. It doesn't mean that that's the best use of my capital.
Sure.
You know,
I mean, it's pragmatic.
it's just a matter of resources going to their highest and best use.
Right, yeah.
And so if it's too wishy and not real enough, it's and you know, when you get grants to do these sorts of things, I mean, I've been a commissioner for 8 years and we have lots of these things come that you can't act on a measurable deliverable at the end. So for it to have value, it has to have the value component considered, not just everyone's opinions. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. One thing to that point, one thing we've tried to do, this is technically the second year of this project. I was brought on in August. And we've tried to reframe to an extent to make a goal identifying what can have the most impact with the least cost, the least resources, as our budget is limited in this project in terms of funding ends in July 2024. So housing was discussed in the first year, which is needed, but do we have the resources to do that? I think the pointed answer is no. As a cooperative, we don't. That is probably bigger than us. So how can we go about identifying, like you're saying, something that is achievable based on budgets available and will still do great social good as well as economic development for Albany County?
The housing's everyone's favorite, but it's not a function of government. It's a function of private capital. And government doesn't do it well.
Commissioner Gosar, any questions, any comments?
Nope. Thanks, Tim, for the presentation. Really do appreciate it.
Could I have a motion for item 12?
I move that we approve item 12, the letter of support for United Way's Community Impact Project, and direct the chair to sign it on our behalf.
Second.
It moved and seconded that we approve item 12 and direct the chair to sign it on our behalf. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. Okay.
Thanks much.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, let's skip over item 13 and move on to item 14. Present for approval, notice of default for nonprofit recipients of ARPA funding. Bailey.
Let's see, so as one of the requirements we put out with our ARPA funding to the nonprofits was a quarterly report. The first quarterly report was due by October 31st, end of the working day. At this point, we are still waiting to hear from 4 of those entities. Laramie Cares, Laramie Connections, Laramie Foster Closet, and the Open School. We have yet to receive anything from them. Throughout the month of October, Brady and I sent multiple emails out to these entities to remind them multiple times that these reports were due, and we even received questions from a few of them and still never got their final reports. After talking with Jennifer, she decided to come up with a letter that will be sent from the commissioners to these entities, explaining what the next step will be if we do not receive their report within 30 days. Usually what happens, at least even me being on the receiving end of grants, if I don't turn reports in, they hold my money. Well, we don't have that option because we've already given out the money. So this was Jennifer's suggestion and I'm all for it. Anything to help me get these reports and keep people in compliance and us in compliance.
Well, I guess ultimately we would request them to return the money.
Yes.
If they can't send the justification, they have to send the money. Might be easier to produce the report.
Yeah, exactly. You'll have that reported.
You know, I'm just, it's a guess that I have, you know, just a wild stab in
It'll
the
be
dark.
interesting how quick I get that after these letters come up, but we'll see.
Well, it's interesting that you haven't received much feedback when you've already put out all these other sort of red flags and warning calls.
And to be fair, I mean, our list was longer yesterday. IT held a couple of them up in emails. We eventually got them, but it didn't dawn on me to ask them. until yesterday when Gail had submitted I got her report, but her supporting documentation was still missing, and she said she had sent them, but she had somebody else send them, and that email wasn't recognized. So IT had those, and then it dawned on me to ask them if they had any more. But we're still waiting on these 4. So
What's the due date? What is the due date?
it was October 30th or 31st, the end of the
Gotcha.
month. So it's the following month after the quarter is what we've done. To make our reporting come April, everything then is up to date. I'm not going back and fighting, trying to get answers out of people. But this was also part of the requirements that we put out as the funder, so.
Commissioner
O'Mara. Sorry, can you go, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that as a person who deals in the grant world and has dealt in this grant world, that Bailey's staff has put together a really nice template for the reporting. And they also had frequent reminders to us. And so I think what's being contemplated here is not unreasonable in the least, quite honestly. And those reports need to come in. Thanks.
And commissioners, this is Jennifer. I just wanted to add, Laramie Foster Closet did submit a report a day late, but it's in a format that isn't readable for us on the county computers. And Bailey has reached back out and hasn't gotten anything else from them. So their letter acknowledges that that was received on the 1st and that the requests for the information in a readable format have also been submitted and not followed.
And, when we were first considering all this and had input from nonprofits, they were aware of this reporting and actually had agreed, signed on to that from the get-go. So to be delinquent now is a little bit.
And Commissioner Gosar's right. I mean, we did try to make this a very easy report that they could fill out, because we know not all of them are familiar with federal funding. And I mean, we don't want them to be stuck on it. Like, it's federal funding, they don't want to apply. They should have access to the funding just like everybody else does. But we do still have to make sure we're reporting to the feds what we need to. And if they hurt us, then that could put our funding in jeopardy, and I'm not gonna let that happen. So.
Thank you for being on top of this, Katie. All right, could I have a motion for item 14?
I move that we approve item 14 as presented.
Second.
It moved and seconded that we approve this notice of default for nonprofit recipients of ARPA funding. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Thank you, Bailey. Let's move on to item 15. The request for allocation of American Rescue Act funds for additional election expenses. Jackie.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you. I presented a memorandum in your packet requesting additional ARPA funds in response to the additional expenses associated with the 2022 election cycle. As you're aware, I had a vacancy in my election department to begin with. And then I did have one employee that was out on FMLA and one employee that was a candidate on the ballot, which really shortened the workload for the rest of the team. I have to commend the grants department under the leadership of Bailey and Brady, who stepped forward to assist us. And it also pulled basically 3 others from my front staff to assist in manning the polling place for early voting, as well as the other responsibilities. As you know, the work week just for elections itself is anywhere between 60 to 80 hours. And last week we came close to putting it in close to 78 hours in 1 week. With the amount of time that was earned between 6 individuals from my staff over the period of the election cycle. That equated to almost 400 hours. I certainly do not want to go into the leadership of the new clerk to have to absorb this expense or this liability in allowing these employees to take comp time of which they rightfully earn. And so I am requesting, as part of additional funding, monies to cover that. And it's not all. I think some of the employees need to take some time, both mentally and physically, just to get focused on getting back to their regular routine and responsibilities. But I'm requesting approximately $11,800 to pay out for that comp time. We also had additional ballots that had to be purchased, as you're well aware, or maybe you're not aware. In the primary, our ballot was 14 inches long in regards to the ballot card using the express vote. For the general, we had to go to 17 inches because the ballot was very, very large with the number of candidates for the various offices. That required us to purchase additional stock that we weren't planning to purchase. We also had, in order to balance out the number of judges to serve at the polls, many judges, I'm talking about 2 judges that commuted from Laramie to serve as judges of election in Centennial. I had judges that went to Seville Wildlife Research. I had judges that went to Harmony, which overexpended my line item with my travel and mileage for my election judges. I also requested and received funding for site support for the primary election, and actually it was a benefit for us, not so much for the general, solely because the support that we received was very much appreciated, but the individual that we had was more savvy with the coding that we do internally and not so much on the software where we could have used his help. We also had additional printing, as you know, in the primary election. We had several hundred, probably over 1,000 changes in voter registration with party changes, new voter registrations, even address changes, which required us to print additional voter registration cards as well as maps and signage, because we had to, initially from the primary, we were going to utilize Slade School, and we had notified the electors in that area that Slade School was their polling place. But when the school was not available and readily to be occupied, we had to move that polling site to Indian Paintbrush for the primary, and then move it back for Slade School. So we've encountered additional expenses that were not foreseen when I prepared the budgets. At this time, I would request an additional $29,000 to cover these additional expenses. Please note that you know that if all of this money is not expended, it will be returned. I just would like to cover the basis so that we can move forward, close out this 2022 election cycle, and leave it in the hands of the new clerk as she takes her reign in January.
Any questions for Jackie, commissioners? I think it's the price we pay for fair and secure elections. And I know that's what we had this time around, both for the primary and the general. Also, those 78-hour work weeks, I felt like it was 78 hours on election day alone. And I hadn't even been involved in the months that you guys have been. So
you know, the beauty of it,
team.
well, thank you. The beauty of it is no complaints. No one has ever come forward and complained to any of us that, oh my God, why did I do this? Why, everybody worked as a team. I do also want to mention the overwhelming appreciation that I got from the judges by you providing their lunch and their dinner. They could not be more appreciative. I don't think there was a polling place where they even were eating together, even though it might be a bite here and a bite there, that they took the time and they acknowledged that. So thank you, commissioners, because that was something that has never been done before in Albany County and something much appreciated. The whole process wouldn't have been possible, not only just for my team, but all of the volunteers that served as judges of election, the partners that we have, the school district, Seville, Laramie, Peak, Rock Rivers, the fairgrounds. There just is a group of individuals that are committed to provide safe and secure elections in Albany County. And I'm proud to say that upon the certification of both the primary and the general election, that I think even though there are winners and there are losers, anyone who put their hat in the ring that wants to serve as a public servant is a remarkable winner in my eyes, and I appreciate the efforts that were put forth.
And I too want to acknowledge all the volunteers who came forth to be election judges. I know my election judges at my precinct, they were all very pleased to do it. They actually enjoyed it, loved just talking with among themselves as well as the public that came in to vote, and said, they do this because they enjoy that aspect of the job. So
I certainly
we're blessed to have
encourage-
such good volunteers.
You can get a better understanding of the process if you get involved. And so I would encourage anyone out there that has an interest in elections to really see the behind the scenes work that's involved, but also to be a part of the process, because the fruits really outweigh the negatives, even though at times the negativity was difficult, but overall I couldn't have been more prouder.
I would like to say that I noted a lot more help, a lot more volunteers, judges, poll watchers, participation from people, and the feedback was, now they can see what controls are in place, and when you witness the process, then I've seen people criticize something they don't understand, and then when they understand, they appreciate it tremendously. So
I appreciate you sharing that, because not always do we hear, the positive feedback that they get. I kind of wish that, although it's not something that I will do, but maybe, we've learned some things, especially as we prepare for the county campus and during the county campus, to have the chief judges come to understand why it's so important that we do what we do and ask what we ask of them, just so that when it comes time to the canvassing process, that it does run smoothly, and that the questions can be answered more so by them, because we're not at the polls the 14 hours that they are.
right. Yeah, it's interesting that the election process and conducting it, you have duties, timelines, processes, and you have to follow them. You don't necessarily have time to stop and teach. And so hopefully the poll watchers and the election judges are prepared to answer questions out in the public about how it works, so that people have confidence and understand.
I've always been an advocate. If there's a problem or even a suggestion to improve, I can't know it if they're not willing to share. So I really am hopeful that, we get feedback to improve the process. We've learned a few things that I will pass on to my successor, in hopes that, they'll at least consider it. But I'm proud of the results that came out of the work that was done.
And this whole process allows for seasoned judges to pass on their experience to those that are just coming on board, so that it just, it's continual then. And that's the nice thing about this process. We don't want to ever have just a bunch of newbies out there doing it. So
Heber, I believe you voted the fairgrounds. And I don't know if you had the opportunity to witness the high school student that was involved.
She was awesome.
Her energy was contagious to the point where when I was able to visit the site, the electors were saying, wow, how can you have this much energy? And it was like she had a flow of her swing and, here's your sticker and please exit this way. And I mean, she did that the whole time.
That's true.
That's the excitement. And I think that a lot of us can learn that, although by the end of the day, I don't know, I can't say we've got that energy, but she was a breath of fresh air. And I hope that it will encourage her colleagues to get involved too, because it's the younger generation that we need to help us through this process.
Well, interesting. I don't know if you noticed this, but by my observation, the crowd of poll watchers and election judges got younger than in past elections. So it showed I guess a renewed interest in the process, and that is a good thing.
And
also,
to add to that, Heber, we had over at Spring Creek a number of first-time voters. They may have turned 18 a year ago, but this was the first general election that got primary election. So we made a big deal about it. I wish we had had a cowbell there.
Right.
Then you can attest. I got my cowbell.
There were high school seniors I know, you turn 18 your senior year, and some of them, have done that already. And I had some kids tell me, that they voted, and that was fun.
Okay, so can I have a motion for item 15?
I move that we approve the request from Jackie Gonzalez, the county clerk, to fund the additional expenses incurred during the primary and general elections as presented.
Second.
And moved and seconded that we approve the allocation of the ARPA funds for the additional election expenses. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jackie. Let's move to item 16, present for approval the revised letter of support for the Pilot Hill, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Grant application. Beatty.
Let's see, we recently applied for the pre-application for the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation for 2 different projects. One was the Pilot Hill project, one was the soccer club project. The soccer club, however, did not get invited to do an application, but Pilot Hill did. So Sarah Brown Matthews and I have been working on she's been working on the application because of course they gave us 3 weeks with the election in the middle. So she's been working on it. And luckily it's not too big of an application, but we had already requested a letter of support from the commission. And there's a sentence that I added just because that was a sentence that they really wanted in that letter of support. So that's all it is. Everything else is just the same. The sentence that I added is this project is shovel ready and may proceed. It is able to be completed within 2 years. That's the only thing I added to this.
I move that we approve the revised letter of support for the Pilot Hill, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Grant application.
Second.
And moved and seconded that we approve this revised letter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Thank you, Bailey. Acknowledge receipt of letter of resignation from Judith S. Wagner, Director for Rainbow Valley Special Road District. You guys all had a chance to read that letter?
I move that we acknowledge receipt of the letter of resignation from Judy Wagner
Second.
from the Valley Road District.
Been moved and seconded that we acknowledge the receipt of the letter of resignation from Judith S. Wagner from the Rainbow Valley Special Road District. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. And so then, Jackie, do we respond in some way? Do you respond in some way?
No, we
Okay.
don't.
Okay.
We don't.
Sue, I have a question about that. That, and maybe that's appropriate for right now, maybe not, but this meeting's pretty short. And I know that the formation of that road district, that improvement district, was somewhat contentious. And I've had some people out there ask me what the process is to sort of undo it, thinking that we can undo it, but I don't think we can, so when we receive a petition to form a special district, filed in clerk's office, there's the process that we go through. So it's interesting that in state law, we have the power to allow or create, the creation of a special district, but we don't have the power to take it away. And I'm curious if, and Jennifer might know the answer to this, if we've ever responded. I could mention the people's names. I don't know if that's something I should do, but I wonder if we've ever responded to them with the answer that once it's formed, we can't take it away.
Have you had a formal request on this? A formal letter
Yeah,
asking to the
and
process?
and there was a big packet of information given to some of us. Maybe it was before you were
This
on the
hasn't been
commission.
since I was on, because I don't
It's
remember.
been a little while. And maybe Pete knows about this. Do you know what I'm talking about, Pete?
I do, Heber. I don't know that it was formally presented. I can't remember, but I do remember the packet of information because I read it. And yeah, I think you're right, that there was some idea that we could undo that. And I think you're heading down a really interesting path, because I think we should provide, if we can, people with what we can and can't do. And I think that's an important piece.
Jennifer, do you have anything to add to that as far as knowledge of what that process would look like?
I don't off the top of my head. I'm happy to do some research and put some information together. I think whatever information was given to the commissioners was before I was here also, because I don't ever remember seeing anything. But I can do some research and put together just some information about formation and if it's possible to dissolve it after it's been formed, all of those things. I'm not entirely certain without looking.
Yeah, that would be great, Jennifer.
Okay.
No big rush on it, but that would be
Look at
nice.
Jackie going.
Yes. You can do it. I would say I know there's statutes on it. I just don't know what they say.
Well, it's 22-29401 is what it is. But so I guess my point is, I actually think that the packet of information was probably handed to Pete and me without it being submitted through the clerk's office. So it's not logged as a communication that, so, because that's a matter of public record, the communications to the commission. And so if the clerk wasn't aware of it, and I guess I didn't know that, you know what I mean? So Probably, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give my packet to Jennifer and she can look at what's in it. I mean, I guess it's one of those things where some of them are concerned that it wasn't formed properly. And from our perspective, it's like a neighborhood disagreement, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't created properly, like that the commissioners or the clerk made a mistake. But as I remember, there's some disagreement about whether all of that was appropriate or not. And I don't know that it would make it like null and void from its outset. But I think that might be what the person's goal is. And so it's probably something, if I give that packet to Jennifer and she looks through it, she'll understand what the assertions are and whether they're legal assertions or just sort of like, neighborhood dispute assertions. And I'm 90% sure that they're neighborhood dispute assertions, that they don't have any allegations that it wasn't done properly on the Albany County side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna guess that, I don't know what Pete would say about that, because it's been a while since I read that, but that's kind of the conclusions I came away with.
Yeah, I can't remember the details of that discussion either, and I guess I really don't know that I know exactly where we fit into the road district making or designing, but yeah, I will. I believe I have that packet also. So if somebody else needs it, I'll give it to you, Sue, if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it, and then if you could get your
I'll
copy
give
to
my
Jennifer,
copy to
that would be
Jennifer.
great.
And then,
And I'm happy to scan it when I get it and give it to the clerk's office as well.
yeah. I don't think it can take us anywhere except to give that person an answer, which, and I won't speculate what the answer is. I will. Legally, we can't dissolve a special district once it's formed. We have our legal statutory place in forming a special district, and the clerk does too. But we don't have the same ability to make one go away after it's formed. And it's interesting because it's kind of a contention in the legislature, because some special districts, it could be an irrigation district, it could be a water district, it could be whatever, but if they're not doing well, they don't submit their reports to the county or whatever. And we've been through that too. Or they can't keep an elected board together or whatever, at some point they're sort of not functioning, but I don't even think there's a process for us to step in, and commandeer them or whatever to make them function. So, and that might be a good thing, but it's an interesting thing that the state law allowed for them to be formed and in sort of open-ended. There's not a bookend on the other end.
Well, Jennifer, you delve into that and see what you can find out.
I'll do it.
Thank you. Okay, we voted on that, right, Jackie?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to item 18, present for discussion, Title 25 agreement with Ivans Memorial Hospital. Jennifer.
So this agreement is for our Title 25 services. We talked about it, I believe, in May. And at that time, I had suggested that we propose to the hospital that instead of paying the Medicare rate for hospital stays for those first 3 days, exclusive of holidays and weekends, that we pay the hospital the Medicaid rate. The Medicaid rate is what WBI charges us if we take somebody up there. And the hospital's response at that time is included in that email string, and said it wasn't something they could manage financially on their end. It wasn't feasible. So I reached out to several of the other counties and the county attorneys to ask what their processes were for Title 25. And what I learned very quickly is there's no standard process. And some counties have an agreement with their hospital that dates back 20 years or more from where they sold the hospital the land, and there was an agreement that they wouldn't pay for those, and that agreement hasn't yet expired. But it expires, I think, in like the next 5 years. It was Natrona County, and I asked if they had a plan, and they do not. Uinta County I talked to, and they have their own facility, and they contract with providers when they have Title 25 patients, but they do not Title 25 people unless they're actively suicidal. So other than that, it's a varied hodgepodge of things. And then the most recent communication was from Jim Vance, that letter that's in there saying essentially the same thing as the last emails, that we need to get it resolved or the hospital will work with us until we can find another provider. I had talked to Sheriff Applehans, and it's not financially feasible to transport patients to WBI. It requires 2 deputies to go up there and back, and that cost is not, we would not save any money, and we would put the sheriff's office in a position of, when they're having staffing issues, having to pull people away. So my suggestion to this board now is that we sign the agreement at the Medicare rate, which is the $13.55 a day. Because we need the BHS floor at IMH is fabulous, and they do a really great job with our Title 25 and being part of the gatekeeping team and all of those things. It's not an issue of care by any means, just cost. So my suggestion would be now that we just sign the agreement at the Medicare rate for this year. And then as the commission moves forward, maybe we can look at the funding or the monies that we pay for EMS services and Title 25, and that the jail pays to the hospital for inmates and things like that, in conjunction with their mills that they get from property tax, and see if there's any adjustment or negotiation in the future so that the hospital plays a little nicer in the sandbox.
And Jennifer, this goes, the fiscal year, so this goes to June?
Correct. It's July 1. It backdates it to July 1. They've been invoicing us at the $13.55 rate, and we have been paying it at the $13.55 rate. I didn't want to get into the mess we had before where we were so far behind on bills, and it was terrible. I thought if it came to an agreement, we could adjust it at that time, but it was better to pay it as we went along. So it does backdate it to July 1, and it goes through June 30th of 23.
How far in the black, how many millions of dollars in the black is the hospital every year? Does anybody know the answer to that question? 35 million? I don't know. It's a lot for a nonprofit.
I don't have that information in front of me. I think it's something that we can certainly look up. All I remember reading was the articles in the paper saying that they were in the black for the last several years and have won awards for how they've managed and turned around the financial end of the hospital and all of those things. But as for specific dollar figures, I don't know.
To me, if the gatekeeper process is working so that we don't wind up using Title 25, invoking it unnecessarily, there could be more money to be saved if that process is effective and works properly than the space between the Medicare and the Medicaid rate. The only thing is, I don't have any insight into that process, but I know that the attorney's office does, because they're the ones who, there's a legal process to go Title 25. So I'm curious if you can speak to the effectiveness of the gatekeeper process, Jennifer?
Certainly.
Jennifer earlier today about this topic, and she said, and I'll let you speak for yourself, Jennifer, but she said that there are other counties in Wyoming that are very envious of our gatekeeper program because they don't have something like that in place. And it has been very effective here and very successful here. Jennifer.
That is accurate. Our program here runs really well. Back when Peggy and Dale Stalder put together the Mental Health Board and the Title 25 Gatekeeper program when it was allowed by statute, they worked very hard on that then, and the team has continued to work very hard on that. We work closely with BHS, with VOA, who is the gatekeeper here in town. They have an employee, and she acts as a case manager really for the people with the mental health issues who just need some oversight to make sure that they're taking their meds and getting to appointments and doing all those things. And it has been a phenomenal program to help with that stability for those individuals who have mental health issues. We have VOA coordinates a quarterly or so lunch that law enforcement from both the city and the county, Sheriff Applehans was there at this last meeting. Assistant Chief Terry was there. And we talk about, what the programs are doing, how they function, and explain it to the agencies after the arrest so that we get some buy-in from the officers so that they know when they're Title 25ing some of these people, we really are making an effort to help them, to keep them out of that criminal court system and keep them more stable. Our office has done training at the last CIT training that was put on, I think the end of October. We did a Title 25 training there. We have also gone and done Title 25 training a couple different times so that we covered all of the shifts in the detention center so that the deputies there are aware of how the process works. And if they have questions that they can reach out to our office. We try to maintain and have been very successful at maintaining relationships with not only the gatekeepers, but the staff at BHS and the defense attorneys that are representing these patients through the Title 25 process so that it's more of a treatment process rather than a punishment or unnecessary confinement process.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, and it saves money. So then it leaves a bit resources available to more people who need them.
Yes, it really does.
And I would say probably the disparity between Albany County and some of the other counties around the state in terms of how it's offered or executed Title 25 kind of process has everything to do with, but like all the variables, who their population is, what resources are available in that community. Maybe they end up going the most expensive option, Title 25, because it's the only option, or they don't have enough. They can't get to critical mass, with providers and law enforcement and everybody to make it go the way we are able to make it go here. And actually, there are communities who could learn from us that are similar in size, population-wise, like Sweetwater and Campbell and Sheridan and Natrona and Laramie counties. There's some more populated counties, even Park, right? So yeah. So I guess that was my point, that I don't have a huge beef with the Medicare versus Medicaid rate as long as the process works. I don't want to get focused on the wrong thing.
Certainly. And just to point out too, part of the reason that Title 25 in Albany County has done so well is this board's continued commitment to fund the gatekeeper program and those funds that we pay to the hospital to house our people there. It allows us to be able to do the things we need and actually try and help.
So I have one more question, and that is, how close do we get to our maximum liability? Is it 225,000?
It's 175,000. It was higher last year because we had I think it was. I've operated off of 175, and we should not hit that cap this year. We did not hit it last year either. It gives us some safe room. Last year we had the higher cap because we were still working on cleaning up some of the prior billing issues. But now those have all been resolved. So the hospital is doing a great job of getting us bills in a timely fashion, and we work to make sure that we also get them paid in a timely fashion.
So regardless of whether it's billed at the Medicare rate or the Medicaid rate, we have a max liability of 175K. So it means that the hospital might get more money from the county over fewer patients, but in the end, if the gatekeeper program is working and we sort of have a stop on our loss, then I don't see where we
and I will tell you,
have a liability problem.
I think I misunderstood. Our agreement with the hospital does not have a stop loss provision for the total dollar amount that the county can be obligated for. There's a stop loss provision that we don't pay more than the daily rate for anybody who's up there under Title 25. But if we were in a year where our Title 25 commitment days exceeded the $175,000 budgeted line item, we would have to come back in front of the commission to see about more money.
Is that right? And what about that item 4 here that says county's full liability on this contract shall not exceed 175,000 for the fiscal year?
So we put that in there, and we have that in there. I don't have a lot of faith that would not get challenged if we exceeded it and put us back into a problem area.
But that's where the incentive lies for the gatekeeper program to work.
Correct.
So
But the gatekeeper program, that is the staff at BHS works with the gatekeeper when someone has been Title 25. But that program, other than working with them while they're part in the hospital, and the hospital is part of that treatment team, once they are released from BHS and are back out in the community, the hospital gets notices about treatment progress so that they're aware in case they see somebody who comes in, so that they know how they're doing in Title 25 if there's a crisis and somebody gets admitted. But
almost like there's record sharing or updates back and forth. That
yes, we have releases that we get put in there.
Like HIPAA releases, so
yes.
that process can work.
Yes.
Got it. See, to me, it seems like if the hospital, why don't they meet us halfway? And if they're going to bill at the Medicare rate, why don't they allow us to cap, to have a stop loss at 175?
And it is in there, and our intention would be to enforce it. I'm not certain how that would end up turning out in the long run. My guess is for the 1 year we would have the cap, and then the budget would go up again.
Well, then they'd never do that again.
Yep.
Well, hopefully the conversation would be open enough that they would, we would be looking at whether that's an anomaly or whether some of the other processes aren't working, like the gatekeeper process. And, we continue to offer the most and best service to the most people for the least amount of money. You can't just, like on the hospital side say, okay, well, we don't like that anymore. Like, they're part of the team in the process, so it seems like it would need to be a mental health board team-wide approach to figure out why it happened and how to make it not happen.
Commissioner Gosar, you have any insight into that, being on the mental health board as well as with the hospital?
Yeah, so I am on the hospital board, but I recuse myself on this in EMS discussions because we are players at the county commission, both of those. I think that Commissioner Richardson's raising a really nice point about the community, how to deliver mental health in a community-wide effort. I think this is just really important to think about mental health in that way. I do have a question, Jennifer, and you're more knowledgeable than I. As I was reading through the email stream, it seemed that if a county provided Medicaid rates to a provider, that at the end of the year, the state would come up and make the difference between Medicaid and Medicare. Did I read that correctly, or was that a misread of that information?
So I talked to Commissioner Gosar about that today. I believe that the state pays after our patients are in there for that 72 hours. I had never heard about that reimbursement prior to that reference in Mr. Banz's email. What I think is they have that reimbursement for the state patients when they exceed the 5 days or the 3 days, but I don't know how that's calculated or how that ends up coming back to the hospital. I don't have any insight into that process. And I don't know if it would apply to the county's first or the county's obligation for that first period of time.
Thank you, Jennifer. I guess I just didn't quite understand that reference, and I was interested because it seemed if that were the case, as I explained it, then why would we spend county money when the state would be remunerative of the hospital in the difference? But that's obviously not the case. And so, yeah, I think that this begs a conversation, and I agree with you, Jennifer, that the contract is something I'm willing to sign tonight and pass it through. But I think a larger conversation about mental health in the community and then the hospital's role in mental health in the community alongside Albany County and the city of Laramie and all the school districts. And how do we do this? Although the gatekeeping program is much improved and doing great work, there's more that needs to be done around mental health. And I think that the hospital, county and city and other big entities can be useful in a county-wide discussion about it.
I agree. I think for tonight, the contract that you have in front of you is, I think I updated the dates and it's for that Medicare rate. So if that's what you'd like to do, I think you can just approve that contract and have it signed.
Can I get a motion for item 18?
I move that, well, so it's a discussion item, but it's not an item for approval. So are we?
But that's what Jennifer just said.
But we can do.
Approve it.
Okay. I move that we approve the Title 25 agreement with Ivanson Memorial Hospital as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the Title 25 agreement with Ivanson Memorial Hospital at the rate, Medicare rate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, can I get a motion to approve the payroll and vouchers for November 2022?
I think Pete should do this one. It's hard to make motions from far away, so I was making them all.
Well, I will do it because you guys are picking up the slack. So a big thank you guys for that. I move that we approve the vouchers as presented, item 19.
Second.
Okay, sorry. It's been moved and seconded to approve the payroll and vouchers for November 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. And see no more business before this commission. I move that, well, I adjourn this meeting.
Thank you all. Have a great night. Appreciate it.
You too, Pete. Thanks for joining us.